Now, we're all used to seeing bodies dropping left, right and centre on Game of Thrones, but that is nothing compared to the havoc that this lot have been wreaking throughout their careers. We've put together our top 10 dirtiest players of all time, some of whom you'd love to play alongside, some of whom you'd be embarrassed to share a shirt with, but none of whom you'd fancy going up against. It's going to be heavy. Let's get started. Up first, we've got an old school scrapper with an infamous short temper. Dennis the Menace Wise. It's hardly a surprise that a player who cut his teeth at Wimbledon in the days of the Crazy Gang turned out to be a bit of a live wire later on in his career. Wise's tenacious tackling and aggressive attitude might have made him popular with his own fans, but to everyone else, the little man was a villain. When you bite your opponents, punch taxi drivers and break your own teammates' jaw, you're never likely to be the most popular of all players. Wise's main stations? Wimbledon, Chelsea and Millwall. How fitting. Next up, another midfield mad dog with a famous short fuse. Manchester United legend Roy Keane. Now, Keano had character. His Herculean performance in the 1999 Champions League semi-final, even after receiving a booking which ruled him out of the final, was described by Fergie as the most emphatic display of selflessness he had ever seen on a football field. But Keane was also notoriously volatile, as his unforgivable career-ending assault on Alf-Inge Haaland demonstrated. And while he might have helped his United teammates out in '99, 3 years later he let his Ireland teammates down in spectacular style when he stormed out of Ireland's World Cup squad after a row with manager Mick McCarthy. Training with the squad in Saipan one day, walking his dog at home on his own in Ireland the next. Whatever you think of Keane though, he was a dogged midfield general who took no prisoners, and he certainly can't have been much fun to play against. Now, another centre mid with a hard head and a ruthless streak. Nigel T-Yong booked himself a place in every anthology of footballing hardmen when he hit Xabi Alonso with a move straight out of a Jackie Chan film in the 2010 World Cup final. Fortunately for T-Yong, Dutchman in disguise Howard Webb decided that the kung fu kick was only a minor infraction, and he left the red card in his pocket. So T-Yong simply dug his studs out of Alonso's chest, screwed them back onto his weaponised boots and got on with it. Nigel, you dirty dog. Everyone who's ever played Sunday League will attest to the necessity of letting your opponent know you're there. Diego Costa is there. Since he came to the Premier League, we've obviously all had the pleasure of getting to know our man Costa a lot better. What a delightful bloke. Gouging Lauren Koscielny in the eye, stamping on Emre Can, stamping on Martin Skrtel, and even taking the care to point out to us that he's the victim, gently requesting that we get off his back. Now, in all seriousness, there are a few players in this list who might push their luck, but whom you'd really quite like to have in your team. I, for one, would feel morally compromised even having this petulant kid in my ultimate team. Costa, have a word with yourself. It's jolly good fellows o'clock. Next up, we got another solid gold head case. This one once elbowed Carlos Tevez, kicked Sergio Aguero, and headbutted Vincent Kompany, all in the space of about 2 minutes. Joey Barton has always been a talented player, but unfortunately his wild temper has always hampered his professional progress. It doesn't matter how good you are, at some point you aren't worth the manager's trouble. By the time Joey got to France, his reputation was preceding him. While he was there, he even had a crack at Zlatan. Ladies and gentlemen, Joey Barton. Now, Dennis Wise obviously wasn't the only nutter in Wimbledon's notorious Crazy Gang. Alongside him in midfield was ruthless hardman and later lockstock star Vinnie Jones. Jones played his final professional game back in '99, and a footballing era drew to a close with the end of the millennium. You don't see any Jones-esque tackles anymore. Two-footed, studs showing lunges 2 feet off the ground 2 minutes after the ball's already been played. Not in the professional game at least. Get down the park on Sunday and everyone's still giving it their best Vinny. Next up, a player who can wind up even the most sanguine and jovial characters in the world of football, the Abominable Pepe. His list of famous offences is a long one. Take the time he stamped on Messi's hand, or the time he kicked Getafe's Javi Casquero and raked his studs down his back while Casquero was lying on the floor, or any of the countless times when he's been caught out acting and bloody diving. Pepe plays a different game to the rest of us, but the worst thing is that the bastard always gets away with it. Refs never seem to see, or they let him off. As a footnote, I feel like we should all remember the man used a selfie stick after winning the Champions League final. Dirty, as well as being a complete twat. What a combination. At number 8, a player who was known as tough without ever testing the rules all too much, and certainly without ever getting up to any Pepe-style nonsense. Patrick Vieira. World Cup winner, European Championship winner, Champions League winner, 3-time Premier League winner, Vieira did it all during his career. Long legs, a huge tank, and a quality football brain made him the complete midfielder, and his tackling wasn't bad either. It was also always slightly on the hard side. I certainly wouldn't fancy trying to get past him. Vieira was also one of the only players who could go toe-to-toe with Roy Keane. The battles that these two had are the stuff of Premier League legend. Now, Vieira seems like a bloke you'd love to go for a pint with. The same can't be said about this next player. El-Hadji had a famous row with Neil Lennon during an Old Firm derby while he was playing for Rangers, and he got himself on the wrong side of Steven Gerrard while he was playing for Liverpool, but that is not what he'll be remembered for. Diouf the Llama couldn't stop spitting at people, including, delightfully, at fans. He got himself in trouble on one occasion for spitting at a Celtic fan. Boy, they must love him at Celtic Park. And on another, after he spat at an 11-year-old Middlesbrough fan. Amazingly though, managers just kept signing him, including Neil Warnock, who snapped him up for Leeds just a year after he said the following: "I'd call him a sewer rat, but I don't think he's as good as that. I think that's insulting sewer rats." Nice one, Neil. Last but not least, a player who's played the pantomime villain more than once and seems to love the role. Luis Suarez. When he's on the ball, he is an absolute joy to watch, and his abilities are unquestionably astounding. But his infamy will outlive his reputation as a talented player. In the 2010 World Cup, Suarez saved the ball on the line, got sent off, and then celebrated when poor old Asamoah Gyan missed his penalty. He'd cheated the last African side in the tournament out of a place in the semis, and the world hated him for it. So that was a tough one to top, but he came back 4 years later and gave it his best shot when, at the 2014 World Cup, he bit Giorgio Chiellini. This was the third time he chowed down on an opponent during his career, and after the Chiellini bite, he then pretended that he was the one who'd been injured and Chiellini had shouldered him in the teeth. It's tough, isn't it? 30 goals a season, and all anybody remembers you for is the fact that every now and again you eat a little bit of somebody. Life is not fair. Right, that's enough. I'm starting to feel sick. I've had enough of this horrible lot. Get at us if you think we missed anybody out, and let us know who you think's the worst. And goodbye.